I've got one word for the Alabama football schedule in 2014. Pathetic. Actually, I've got a few more words, like rubbish, joke. Mark Rogers TV as we continue our series looking at every schedule for Power 5 teams in 2014. We make our way to the Alabama Crimson Tide. 11-2 last season, lost the Sugar Bowl to Oklahoma, knocked out of the national championship race and the SEC title run versus Auburn down on the Plains. Of course, 3 national championships under Nick Saban, and they set themselves up pretty well for another national championship run by scheduling West Virginia, Florida Atlantic, Southern Miss, and Western Carolina. Those are the 4 teams that Alabama is going to play in the non-conference schedule. So when I say pathetic, when I say it's a joke, when I say it's rubbish, of course I'm not talking about within the SEC. Within the SEC, most likely the best conference in America, Alabama has to play. Okay, of course, in its division, the other division teams, LSU most notably, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. Okay, in the other division, Alabama will play Florida at home. The Gators down last season at 2-6 in the SEC and 4-8 overall. And of course, that cross-divisional rivalry against Tennessee. You've got Alabama, Tennessee. You've got Georgia, Auburn. And let's see, there's one other game that really makes sense. But it's basically those 2 that the SEC have protected. The LSU-Florida game's a really good matchup in most years. But Alabama, Tennessee, that's a huge rivalry, of course, in the SEC that's been protected. And also Auburn and Georgia, the South's oldest rivalry, has been protected by the SEC. And then they filled in the other slots for cross-division foes that really don't work, like Mississippi State, Kentucky. So Alabama, understand that they play Tennessee. No issue with that. The other game on the round-robin format comes up this year. Florida, who knows how good the Gators are going to be. Very good 2 years ago at 11-1 before losing the Sugar Bowl last season. A big downer for Will Muschamp at 4-8, 2-6 in the SEC. Take into consideration, and this is one big gripe I've got with the SEC and with some other conferences, so it's just not the SEC, it's the ACC as well. And now the Big Ten, now that they've added Maryland and Rutgers, 14 teams for the ACC, the Big Ten, and the SEC, all playing 8-game schedules, missing 5 opponents. So, for example, we would consider to be Alabama and Auburn to be the 2 clear-cut favorites in the SEC Western Division. Alabama's difference in schedule inside the SEC versus Auburn. Alabama plays those 2 teams we talked about, Tennessee and Florida. They went 5-7 and 4-8. That's 9 and 15 overall. 9 and 15 overall. 2-6 and 2-6 in the SEC. 4-12. Alabama's playing 2 teams that went 4-12 in the SEC last season outside the division. Auburn, its chief rival, is playing South Carolina. Pretty good football team. 11-2 the past 3 seasons. South Carolina and Georgia. And even despite losing Aaron Murray and all that offensive talent early in the season, before Murray was lost against Kentucky, Georgia, a top 5 to top 10 team preseason before they slipped to 8-4 and then the bowl loss. So Georgia was 5-3 in the SEC and South Carolina was 6-2. So you're talking about Alabama playing 2 teams that went 4-12 in the SEC last season. Auburn having to play South Carolina and Georgia, who went combined 11-5 in the SEC. That's a huge problem. A huge problem that the SEC is not getting around in any way. Okay, so that's the schedule within the SEC for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Outside of conference, they can control this schedule, and they've done a horrible job. But we know with Alabama's reputation and with the SEC being what the SEC is, both in terms of reputation and reality at this point. We'll see how the league plays this year, but we would expect it to once again be the toughest conference in college football. That Alabama, if they go 11-1, they're going to be fine, and they'll make it, into the 14 playoff. But not helped by this non-conference schedule. So they evidently didn't exactly put themselves out on the line here. West Virginia, that game in Atlanta, August 30th, the opening Saturday of the season. So, yeah, West Virginia, you could say, West Virginia is really good some years. Alabama was not scheduling an elite program like Alabama should when they scheduled West Virginia. In previous years, they've scheduled Michigan. Okay. Michigan was somewhat down that year, but still, it's Michigan. Virginia Tech last year, and it's borderline. Alabama needs to schedule USC, Ohio State, even Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas. They need to schedule the blue bloods of college football. Do I have a gripe with other schools about this? Yes, I do. Ohio State is not recently scheduled difficult either. Okay, West Virginia, though. Yeah, West Virginia's had some good seasons, specifically under Rich Rodriguez. They were a fringe top 10 team. They're a legitimate program. I know they went 2-7 last year. They were horrible, 4-8 overall, 2-7 in the Big 12. So Alabama's going to romp over them by 35 points. West Virginia does not look to be much better this season, maybe a smidge better, but that's Alabama's toughest game, non-conference. So how do we determine whether Alabama shakes out well against the other top teams in the other conferences? Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan State, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, on and on and on. Clemson, Florida State. If they don't play them, they don't play anyone. They've got to play somebody. West Virginia should be the third of 4 non-conference games. Play a flyweight, fine. Western Carolina. And play West Virginia, fine. But play Clemson and play Oklahoma, or play USC in Michigan State. You're Alabama. You're playing West Virginia. Then, wow, you go play Florida Atlantic, and of course you got to play that game at home. We know that. Those are the first 2 games of the season. Oh, week 3, Southern Miss. And when this was 2002, and Alabama was slumping under a number of coaches there, Dennis Franchione and others, the Southern Miss game proved to be a difficult one. They did lose, I remember, in the early 2000s against the Golden Eagles, but that's not going to happen. So that's the 3 games to open the season for Alabama. West Virginia, Florida Atlantic, and Southern Miss before they dive into conference play. Okay, and they really don't have a killer stretch within conference play. Florida, decent team, should be a fringe top 25 team. Ole Miss, fringe top 25 team. Arkansas, bad. Texas A&M, fringe top 25 team. Tennessee, getting better under Butch Jones. Then the toughie against LSU on the road. Mississippi State could surprise, but none of those games back-to-back. LSU, Mississippi State, the toughest back-to-back stretch that Alabama has to face before they finish off with Western Carolina on November 22nd. In November, of all months, when championships should be decided, Alabama's playing Western Carolina before they finish up against Auburn at home. Alabama fans, defend that schedule. You cannot. There is no way. It's pathetic. Alabama is one of the 5, I expect to be one of the top 5 or 10 teams in the country. And but there's not a whole lot of tests in the schedule. And again, they can't do anything about in-conference scheduling, even though the SEC has screwed that up and done a horrible job of figuring that out. And if you'd like to know how we would figure it out, we have, and we've posted videos to let you know how we would schedule within the SEC. And it would be fair and equitable, and it would be balanced based on previous year's results. No, you can't predict how good teams are going to be each season. But last season's results are a pretty good predictor, and we posted videos letting you know how the SEC and other conferences, again, I'm just not picking on the SEC, but the Big Ten, even though the Big Ten going to try to correct it to a certain extent with a 9-game season in a few years, but the Big Ten and the ACC also, with 14 teams playing 8 games, doesn't add up. You miss 5 opponents. Dumb. Okay. Again, can you really get over this? West Virginia, Florida Atlantic, Southern Miss, and Western Carolina. That's who Alabama's playing non-conference. Talk to me, Tide fans, college football fans, SEC fans, right here on Mark Rogers TV.